This is the 2024 Nissan Juke. What's new about it? Is it any better? And should you buy it? I'm AJ, you're watching Autogefühl, and let's dive right in. The first thing you'll notice is the return of this Mark I yellow color. Nissan has been really proud of this in their press release. They've been talking about how they listened to customer feedback and brought back this color. You still have this very Pikachu, cute, round, very funky and youthful design. This is still about 4.2 meters long or 166 inches. However, there is a new variant. This is the top of the range N Sport. It gets things like this contrasting black roof as well as more black cladding lower down. There's also new wheel designs. Based on the trim, you get some different specific options as well. I do like this very glossy 19-inch wheels on this. What about you guys? Put it down in the comments below. Well, the front definitely looks like a Pikachu with the round cheeks. The rear is a little bit more serious, but still very three-dimensional and sculpted. And a sloping windshield, but how does that translate to the interior trunk volume? We'll see in a minute. Lower down, a pretty neat bumper design, and thankfully, no fake exhaust tips. Here we have the key fob, not very spectacular, but the interior, well, that's a whole different story. Materials on the top of the door are a bit hard, but you have some mood lighting right here. I always love nice ambient lighting in a car. Soft padded materials here, and that contrast stitching, that yellow color, it's kind of littered all across the interior. Glossy black, however, right here. Nice storage. If we look inside, you have different interior seat color options. This being the N Sport, this is with the yellow cross-stitching and yellow Alcantara on the top. Animal-free seats, and even the dashboard has further Alcantara and yellow dashes up here. But the big talking point, if you haven't already noticed, is the new infotainment system. So, how's it like getting in? Actually, even though this is a small urban crossover, the seating position is quite upright. It is feeling like an SUV in here. The steering wheel also is really nice and big, and this new 12.3 touchscreen infotainment system is also tilted towards me ever so slightly, and this is a really engaging cockpit. Nice material up here, a damped glove box, which is actually quite large, a little bit larger in this generation. And this 12.3-inch touchscreen, really nice, crisp display, a little bit laggy, but even the 360 camera and the reversing camera has good resolution. You can also choose the widgets in the home screen layout, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, although the navigation doesn't come onto your cockpit here. Only the inbuilt navigation is displayed over there. Hotkey buttons with a volume knob. Hallelujah. Really easy. Big old camera button. I love that. Air conditioning vents, climatization, separate unit with knobs and manual buttons, so really well executed. Wireless charger right here, and this is not cooled on its own. Couple USB chargers, a 12-volt power socket. And here, nice quality. Fit and finish is pretty good in these areas. Some of the areas further down, not the greatest, but I can forgive it. You have your gear selector, driving mode selector here. Electronic parking brake now is standard. The e-pedal and EV buttons are separated over here. Cup holders without any adaptive clamps. And finally, an armrest which doesn't slide up or down, but goes up to reveal pretty small cubby down there. Buttons galore on the steering wheel, and I do mean actual buttons and not capacitive pads. You get paddle shifters if you have the 7-speed dual clutch transmission. This digital instruments, also 12.3 inches, has been improved for this model year. And look at those cool 3D looking gauges on the side for the RPM and the speedometer. You can have the inbuilt navigation on the screen here, but also a host of different useful views, including all of the assistance systems that you've currently activated. You also get the optional Bose sound system with integrated speakers in the headrest, and while I can't play copyright music to show you how it sounds, and this microphone wouldn't do it justice, here's a reaction of me when I had the music pumping in this car. The handle for the rear doors is up here. This is not a big opening, but that being considered, it's pretty tall and getting inside is pretty easy. Materials on the door, it's a little bit of a different story. It's pretty hard and a little bit of padding here, but overall you can see where they've done some cost cutting. Still, some space to store a water bottle. The seats, however, are actually very comfortable, so they've paid attention and put money where it makes the most amount of sense. That also being said, they've also paid attention to detail, so I really love this little place to keep the seat belt when you fold the seats down. The Isofix mounting points are covered by a flap that hinges up so it doesn't fall out and you're not going to lose it. There's also decent seat back pockets here to keep some items. Not much of a transmission tunnel as well, so 3 people in a pinch, sure, can sit pretty comfortably. Charging as well, no air conditioning vents. Overall, I wish there was a lighter interior in this model, so if I were you, I would definitely pick a lighter color just so that it feels a bit more airy, especially in the back here. I have plenty of headroom though, so I'm about 5'8" or 1.7 meters. This is set to my driving position, so you can see I have decent knee room, and because of that SUV seating style, you have the seat a little bit higher, and that also means that as a passenger sitting behind the driver, I also have more room to slide my feet under the front seat. So space is actually not bad. They've maintained a compact exterior, but a pretty well packaged, spacious interior. Despite the sloping window, you actually get up to 422 liters of trunk volume. A little bit less if you have the spare wheel, and lesser still if you have the hybrid, because the battery is there. Still, it's a pretty wide loading area, about 101 centimeters or about 39 inches. And while there are no cubbies back here, you can fold the seats down in a nice 60-40 fashion. They do lay pretty flat. And now, of course, your trunk volume is significantly higher. You can also load longer items that you're getting at IKEA, right? So let's see, this is about 57 inches or about 146 centimeters. Not bad. Same engine options are carried over for this model year. So you get a 3-cylinder turbo petrol, which makes 114 horsepower. You can have this with a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Or you get this 4-cylinder 1.6-liter petrol with a electric motor hybrid system and a 1.2 kilowatt hour battery for a combined system output of 143 horsepower. But they're both only front-wheel drive. All right, so how's the Nissan Juke like to drive? We're on the on-ramp, getting onto a highway, heading back into Berlin. So let's talk a little bit about the steering. I'm going around this corner, and the first thing that kind of surprised me pleasantly is how nice the steering is. There's no slack. It's very direct. It's not too jittery, but it's engaging. It gives you good feedback. There's good weight to it as well. The weight increases when you're in the sport mode. In fact, when you're in the sport mode, the petrol engine in this hybrid powertrain takes center stage. You can hear it a lot more. And again, this is not an eCVT, but it's a multi-mode hybrid system. So the engine can be doing its own thing while the electric motor is, supplementing the power and it's charging the battery. It's a very complex interface between these different the drive systems and the drivetrain. But it's not an unpleasant sound. It's a 4-cylinder, it's 1.6 liters, so it's got a little bit of a thrum. I wouldn't say it's enjoyable to listen to, but it does become louder in the sport mode. The steering also becomes tauter. I think the standard mode is probably already fun enough, and given that this is not a sports car, I think this is a good balance in steering weight and the overall punchiness of the powertrain and the drivetrain. Aside from the steering, the visibility is also really good. You are sitting higher up, so this does have a little bit of that SUV stance. And with the wide front windshield, the large windows on the side, this really high headroom, I feel spacious. It feels spacious. I wish there was a lighter roof liner, a lighter color. And the rear window is also surprisingly good. This wide rear view mirror captures the entire space that is, available with the rear window, and I have a good view out back. No thanks in part also with the really nice and crisp reversing camera. So visibility on the highway or in parking garages, definitely thumbs up for that. Noise insulation now at highway speed is actually pretty good too. These are 19-inch wheels with Hankook tires, but they have really good, they're controlling that rolling resistance, and the sound is also not that bad. Wind noise is also pretty minimal. So overall, it's not... I was driving the Lexus recently, so make sure you check out that video. It's a different class a little bit, but it's still a crossover, an urban crossover, similar size. That definitely had better sound insulation, but this is definitely not bad. It's not loud like some of the other cars. This car also gets some really nice driver assistance systems. So you have a speed limiter, which is really cool. I have liked the speed limiter to use in the city because I want more control. I want to be the one accelerating because I'm continuously slowing down for pedestrians or cyclists. In a city situation, that's more variable. And I want to make sure I don't go over the speed limit and get a speeding ticket. So I'm glad that this is there. But if you press this button here, and I can set the adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist, I set it to the speed limit. This is going to center me in the lane. So it's not just ping-ponging me across the edges of the lane. I can also set the distance I wanted to maintain with the car in front. So all the usual things that we have come to know from other manufacturers as well. And here in the Nissan Juke, it works really confidently. The system doesn't falter. It doesn't. There's no missteps. There's also traffic sign recognition. So it captures the speed limit, shows you that. It also gives you an alert if you're going faster. But I do wish there was a one-key shortcut. There's a button here. There's a dummy which isn't being used for anything. I wish this would have been assigned to that. That the minute the speed limit changes, I can accept the new speed limit as the adaptive cruise control setting or the speed limiter setting, rather than having to press and hold the plus or minus buttons to adapt the speed. Small details like this that I wish this was doing a little bit better. We've been driving for not too long now, but it's giving us, at the moment it says 6 liters for 100 kilometers, 6.2, if you've just started off. And I've been driving earlier before we started filming, and I've seen pretty decent numbers. I would say something around 4.8 to 4.9, especially if you're driving in the city where it gets to use a lot of the electric mode. That's a pretty good number for this hybrid powertrain. Speaking of which, you also have the e-pedal shortcut button down here. When you turn that on, the car just gives you that one-pedal control, you know? So the regenerative braking is at a really high setting. So the minute you start easing away from the accelerator pedal, it automatically starts bringing you, slowing you down. And in this way, with just one pedal, you're able to almost completely control and modulate your speed in the city. The steering the steering radius is also really tight. So parking and maneuvering, doing U-turns, very, very capable, very easy. But on the highway as well, it's very confidence-inspiring thanks to these assistance systems. It feels very planted, and this heavy weight in the steering and this suspension, which is a little bit on the stiffer side, if I'm honest, but the benefit of that is that, like at higher speeds as we go around this corner, the car is very planted. It's very composed. There's very little body roll to speak of. So I think it's a good combination, but just keep in mind it's a little bit, ever so slightly, on the firmer side. We were going on some dirt tracks, as you saw when we were filming the statics earlier, and it did feel a bit jiggly and jittery on the inside on those gravel tracks. So this is the hybrid, right? So there is the 1.6 four-cylinder petrol, and there's the electric system, the electric motor, and the 1.2 kilowatt-hour battery. You can feel the transition between the petrol and the electric drive, but it's very smooth. It's not an eCVT per se, it's a multimodal automatic. It's a little bit more complicated, I guess, but the engine tends to drone Not in a rubber band CVT kind of a way, but you can hear it a little bit louder because it might shift into that specific mode because it needs to charge the battery or to provide extra power. So it's continuously kind of doing its own thing. It does get louder when you're accelerating hard, when you put your foot down, and especially when you go into the sport mode, then the petrol engine is definitely at the forefront, although the electric motor is happy to assist. It jumps in a lot more, and when you put your foot down like this, quick overtakes are also handled really easily. And in the sport mode here, and as I'm going around this bend, you know, the steering also feels a lot heavier. Body control is also really well contained. So the engine and the transmission with this multi-mode hybrid system is as expected. It's not necessarily anything revolutionary. I find that it's as good as the competition. It's nothing specifically better than them. So off the highway and into the city, here in Berlin, the trip computer says we're getting 4.8 liters for 100 kilometers. So there you go. Pretty good number. And this is why I like strong hybrids. Plug-in hybrids, yes, but they make sense when you're able to charge them yourself at home every night. But if you can't, a strong hybrid like this still ensures that you're driving in electric mode in the city and then in petrol on the highway. And because the battery is lightweight, only 1.2 kilowatt hours, it's not causing extra, it's not using up energy just because it needs to be hauled around. So 4.8 I think is a good respectable number. The base variant starts at around 25,000 euros, but the N Sport Hybrid is around 35,000 euros. You keep the right options and you can hover around 30, and I think that's the sweet spot for the Juke. Overall, today, I came away pretty impressed. It's compact, which means it's easy to park, and a short turning radius means it's easy in the city, but the interior packaging means there's a lot of room on the inside. The suspension is a little bit on the firmer side, but that handles really well out on twisty roads with that really communicative steering. This 1.6 hybrid is also the pick between the two engines, in my opinion. But what about you? What do you think of this car? Put it down in the comments below, and why don't you check out some of these other reviews of its competitors.